Hey everyone, it's Haley, and today I'm doing my January wrap-up. I actually had a fabulous reading month in January. I was able to read a total of 11 books. One of those was a graphic novel, and then some were for school, but I read some pretty big books too that were really time-consuming, so I'm really happy with how this month went. And I made my goal of doing a bunch of reviews and of reading one classic. They were for school. I have read 3 of them, but still I did read a classic, so I'm still happy with that. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first book that I read in January is Passenger by Alexandra Bracken. This is her latest novel. It was actually released in the beginning of the month, and she's the author of the Darkest Mind series, which I really loved, so I had really high expectations for this book. It was one of my most anticipated releases for this year, and I was a little bit let down. I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. I had quite a few issues with the romance. There were a lot of info dumps. Kind of just the overall pacing of the story was a little bit lacking, but it was a really cool book, and I think that the rest of the series has a lot of potential, so I definitely will continue with it. Now, I did do a review for this book, so if you want to know more of my thoughts, that will be linked down below for you. The next book that I picked up is Rose Under Fire by Elizabeth Wein. This is the second book in the Codename Verity companion novel duology, so this one doesn't follow the same characters as the first one does, but there is one pretty pivotal character who carries over. She doesn't play as big of a role in this book as she did in the last one, but she does still play a pretty big role. This one follows an American pilot who is captured by the Nazis, and she's put into a concentration camp, Ravensbrück, which is notorious for it's a women's labor camp. So it's kind of about her struggles trying to survive there and all the people she meets. And she's this poet, so it's kind of like the struggling artist trying to survive and thrive in the face of all of this terrible things that are happening. I listened to this on audiobook, and I think that's really the way to go. It was honestly so fantastic. I cannot rave about it enough. I do have a full review, so if you want more coherent thoughts, that will be linked down below for you. It's honestly just such a beautiful duology, and I really just love it. So I obviously gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. Then after that, I picked up Everything by Nicola Yoon. This is a contemporary, a YA contemporary, and it's actually the author's debut novel, and it's about this girl who is allergic to literally everything in the world, so she hasn't left her house in 17 years. But then this guy moves in next door, and she sees him from her window, and they kind of start this relationship. It's really just a beautiful romance, kind of about struggling with illness and not being able to really get out of your shell, quite literally, because she can't leave her house. I did a full review for this one, and I will link that down below. I honestly have really mixed feelings about it because I really loved it, but the ending just... In some ways I loved it, but in some ways it really didn't sit well with me. It felt like a little bit of a cop-out. So there are a few problems that I had with the ending. It wasn't expected at all, but in other ways it just kind of felt like a little bit convenient, but also at the same time just out of nowhere, just out there. So I really don't know how I feel about this one. I think I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars just because of how I feel about the ending. It was a little bit unsettling. I don't know, just watch my review and you'll get much more of what I have to say, because I don't know how to really put it into words. But yeah, this book was really good. I did really enjoy it. Especially for a debut novel, I can't wait to see what else Nicola Yoon is going to write. Then after that, I was just kind of in the mood for a graphic novel, which doesn't really happen often, so I picked up the Game of Thrones Volume 1 graphic novel, and I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars. I honestly didn't really like it. I just don't think Game of Thrones is for me. I don't think it's my kind of thing, so I don't really think I'm going to give the whole huge books a try, because I don't really think I would enjoy it. I've tried to watch the show, tried the graphic novel, and I just haven't really liked any of them. So I just don't think it's for me. And really, the graphic novel, there were a lot of gaps in the plot, so I think if you have read A Song of Ice and Fire, the first book, which is Game of Thrones, yeah, the series is called A Song of Ice and Fire. If you've read the first book, then it would make sense to you, because the missing things you'd be able to fill in, but to read just that, it was really confusing. So yeah, I just wasn't really a big fan. Then after that, unfortunately, school started, so I picked up Measure for Measure by William Shakespeare. I actually am writing a paper on this right now, and I also am doing a huge group project all semester on this play, and I liked it, but also didn't really like it. I think studying it now, I am starting to like it more, but honestly, it's not my favorite. I think I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was okay, but it's definitely not my favorite. I usually really like Shakespeare's comedies, but this one is just a really dark comedy, so it wasn't really my favorite. In case you didn't get it, it wasn't my favorite. I've said that like 6 times now, so I'm just gonna stop. And then another book that I read for school is Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. This is my very first Dickens novel, and I'm really happy to say that I made it through it. I did enjoy it. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It's really interesting to study and kind of see, because I'm taking a class on how the Victorians viewed children and everything. So I find this to be really interesting, how they use the orphan and like they use him as a symbol of what society is like, because he's being raised by society. So I found Oliver to be a really interesting character, and I think this book is, it makes sense why it's in the canon, and I think it's a really great read, but it's not necessarily my kind of children's literature. I just find that Dickens is way too wordy. He was paid by word count, and I just think that there are so many times where he just kept on going and going because of that. So he's not my absolute favorite writer. I think he's brilliant, but I just think that sometimes it was a little dense and exhausting. So I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. Then after that, I picked up Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This is her latest book that takes place in the Grisha universe, and this one has been getting so much hype, and I completely understand why. It's about these 6 people who go on this heist. It's absolutely ridiculous, action-packed, super cool. I did a full review for it, so I will link it down below. I rated this 5 out of 5 stars, and I honestly cannot wait to see where this story is gonna go, because it is nuts. Then after that, I picked up Arif Fire by Sarah J. Maas. This was a reread for me because the first time I read it so fast that I honestly, rereading it was like reading it for the first time again, and I really enjoyed it, but I have to say this is my least favorite in the series so far. This one is very much kind of a bridge novel that's kind of just setting up for Queen of Shadows, which I haven't read yet. I'm probably going to pick it up next though. But that being said, I did still love this one. I just felt like there was a lot of lacking in the action, and it was just kind of advancing the plot for the next book, but it is still really great. I liked where it was going, but I liked all the characters that you were introduced to. I'm going to be doing a full review for this, so when that is up, I will link it down below. I'm not sure when it will be going up, probably within the next couple of weeks, but yeah, I do really love this one, and I'm really excited to read Queen of Shadows. Then I picked up LAIR of Dreams by Libba Bray. This is the second and long-awaited book in the Diviners series, which is going to be 4 books, I think. It's honestly going to be done by the time I'm like 30, maybe, if we're lucky. This one was really disappointing, I'm not gonna lie. I'm going to do a full review for it, so like Arif Fire will be up in the next couple of weeks. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars, and I gave the Diviners a 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved that book. I thought it was just so good, but this one just not a lot happened, and I just felt like I was waiting and waiting, and this book is huge, so like to be that big and to be waiting forever for it to come out, then I'm reading it and nothing is happening, and I'm just waiting for things to happen, and it's just kind of in the last 100 pages things happen. It was just a lot of the same thing, really monotonous and tedious. But I am excited for the rest of the series. I just wish that this one I could say more positive things about, but I honestly can't. Then I picked up Othello by Shakespeare. This is a reread for me as well. I read this. This was the very first Shakespeare play that I read for fun, and I enjoyed it just as much the second time around. I think this one is really cool. There's a lot of stuff going on in it. There's like political things, racial prejudice, like there's tons of stuff. It's just crazy, just batshit crazy really, but I really enjoy Othello, and I'm really excited to study it in school, which I think we're starting on Monday, so that'll be fun. Then the final book that I read is another reread. I had lots of rereads this month, and this is another one that I read for school, and that is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. Now you guys know by now how much I absolutely adore this story. I just love it so much. It's very near and dear to my heart, so I've only read the traditional version, but this time around, since I had to reread it for class, I decided to pick up this Rifle Paper Company edition, the Puffin and Bloom one, because it has like all new illustrations illustrations. This always happens when I try, I can never find an example. Yeah, so it has all new illustrations done, like there's additional illustrations, there's just, it's so pretty, and it was honestly such a joy to read. I think the illustrations are so beautiful. Anna Bond is such a talented artist, and I thoroughly enjoyed this, so I obviously gave it 5 out of 5 stars again. So that's going to be all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget, if you are looking for a review, it'll all be linked down below if I've done one, or if it's not out yet, I'll put when it's going to be out because I'll schedule them ahead of time a lot of the time. So you'll see when the review is coming and you can kind of plan ahead. So yeah, let me know what you guys read in January. I hope you guys had just as successful reading month as I did. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye! The buttons on my shirt just came undone. Awkward.